The unexpected signal. The silence of space was broken one cold, quiet night. It was a time when humanity had almost forgotten about the vast expanse of the stars. Earth had its own problems, wars, resources, and everyday struggles. But the universe, it seemed, had not forgotten about them. Far beyond the reach of Earth, something stirred, something old, and something that would change the course of history. It all started with a strange signal. The signal appeared out of nowhere, and at first, it seemed like nothing more than space noise, an unexplained glitch in the system. However, a group of scientists at the International Space Monitoring Center quickly noticed something strange about it. It wasn't just random static. It was too structured, too precise. They had seen similar signals before, but never one like this. It was as if someone, or something, was trying to communicate. Dr. Leila Harrison, a leading scientist at the center, was the first to notice the irregular pattern. She wasn't sure if it was important, but her instincts told her to investigate. She sat up late that night, staring at the screen, listening to the frequency. It had a strange rhythm to it, something she couldn't quite explain. "Do you think it's alien?" asked a colleague sitting nearby, glancing nervously at the data. "It's too early to tell," Dr. Harrison replied. "But this is something we've never encountered before." The signal's repetition was different from anything humanity had ever encountered. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't random. It had a purpose, a deliberate structure. They didn't know who, or what, had sent it, but they had to find out. As hours passed, the team worked around the clock, trying to decode the message. Every attempt to trace its origin seemed to hit a dead end. It was coming from a distant part of the galaxy, too far for any of their usual methods of communication to reach. Yet, somehow, this signal had made its way across the stars and reached Earth. Days turned into weeks. The world's attention turned to the mystery of the signal. Governments were involved. The military was on alert, and scientists were frantically working to decrypt what little they had. The media was filled with reports about the signal, sparking curiosity and fear in equal measure. Could it be a message from another civilization, or was it something else entirely? As the signal continued, the patterns became clearer. Dr. Harrison was the first to identify the key. She realized that the structure of the signal wasn't just random noise. It was a coded message. With great excitement, she passed the discovery on to the team. "We've got something," she said, her voice shaking. "It's a message, but it's not just any message. It's old. Very old." They weren't sure what to expect next. The team worked tirelessly, translating the data. It was slow, frustrating work, but after several more days, they managed to decode part of the message. The first words that appeared on the screen sent a shockwave through the room. "The Supercarrier has awoken. Prepare for its return." The Supercarrier. Those two words echoed in Dr. Harrison's mind. The Supercarrier had been a myth, a forgotten relic of humanity's past. It was said to be humanity's ultimate weapon, a massive warship built for a battle that humanity had won long ago. Some thought it had been lost forever. Others believed it had been destroyed. But now, the message was clear. The ship was coming back. The rest of the message was fragmented, but the meaning was becoming terrifyingly clear. The Supercarrier was alive, or at least, it was returning. The signal spoke of the ship's power, of its unimaginable capabilities. It was the kind of ship that could turn the tide of any war, and it had been lost to time. Now, it was coming back, but no one knew why. Dr. Harrison felt a knot form in her stomach. What had happened to the ship? Why had it been lost for so long? And what did this mean for humanity? Was the Supercarrier a force for salvation, or was it a harbinger of something darker? The team quickly sent the message to the highest authorities. It wasn't long before world leaders were briefed on the signal, and their response was immediate. The military ramped up preparations, and all attempts were made to trace the signal's origin. But the Supercarrier was far away. Its location was unknown, and it was moving at a speed that defied conventional understanding. It wasn't just a ship, It was something else, something far more advanced than anything humanity had ever built, and it was coming back. The world held its breath. As news spread across the globe, a mixture of fear and excitement took hold of humanity. The Supercarrier, a ship of unimaginable power, was returning. What did it want? Why had it awoken after all this time? Was it coming to help humanity, or would it be a force too great to control? The days passed quickly as the world's leaders made frantic plans. They had to prepare for the ship's return. No one knew what to expect, but one thing was certain: humanity would need to be ready for whatever came next. In the deepest corners of space, far from Earth, the Supercarrier was moving. Its engines hummed with power, and its systems began to wake from their centuries-long slumber. Humanity had unknowingly triggered its return, and now, the world would never be the same. The unexpected signal was only the beginning. The story of the Supercarrier's return had just begun. The race against time. As the message from the Supercarrier echoed across the world, the atmosphere on Earth shifted. For centuries, humanity had lived in the shadow of their past accomplishments, unaware of the hidden secrets buried deep within their own history. The return of the Supercarrier, a ship that had once been humanity's mightiest weapon, was not just a revelation. It was a crisis waiting to unfold. The news spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to respond, and the media had a field day, fueling speculations and theories. Was the Supercarrier coming to help humanity once again, or was it a relic of war that would bring destruction upon them? The question weighed heavily on everyone's mind. At the International Space Monitoring Center, Dr. Leela Harrison and her team continued their work tirelessly, trying to decode the message further. But as the days went by, the pressure mounted. Time was running out. "Dr. Harrison, we've got something new," said one of her colleagues, his voice tight with urgency. Dr. Harrison quickly moved to his side. On the screen, new data appeared, this time a more complete version of the message. The part that stood out was chilling. "Prepare yourselves. The enemy approaches. The Supercarrier will lead the charge." The implication was clear. The Supercarrier wasn't returning just to make its presence known. It was preparing for a battle. But who or what was it preparing to fight? "I don't understand," Dr. Harrison murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "If this ship is returning to fight, then who is the enemy?" She and her team had been struggling to understand the exact origins of the Supercarrier. It had been constructed by humans during a forgotten war, but records were scarce. What little they knew suggested the ship was designed to be a warship like no other, powerful enough to stand against the mightiest forces in the galaxy. Now, after centuries of silence, it was waking up. But this time, it was bringing with it an ominous warning. "The message mentions an enemy, but it doesn't specify who they are," Dr. Harrison said. "We need to find out more." Meanwhile, world leaders were convening. A top-secret summit was being held to discuss the implications of the Supercarrier's return. The United Nations, the European Union, and the leaders of major countries gathered in a secure location. Tensions were high. "We have to act fast," President William Harper of the United States said, his voice grave as he addressed the global leaders. "We have no idea what's coming, but we can't sit idle and wait for it to reach us." The world was united in its fear, but the response was divided. Some nations wanted to send a team to try to communicate with the Supercarrier, believing that its return was a sign of hope. Others, more cautious, believed it was a weapon that could be used against humanity, and they feared its power. "Should we prepare for war?" asked a senior military officer in the room. The question lingered in the air, unanswered. No one knew what kind of warship the Supercarrier truly was anymore. No one knew whether it was capable of peace or destruction. The unknowns were too great, and every move made was filled with uncertainty. In space, the situation was becoming just as critical. The Supercarrier was still far away, but its arrival could not be ignored. Even from the far reaches of the galaxy, sensors on Earth picked up strange signals. The Supercarrier's engines were active, sending out waves of energy that were unlike anything humanity had ever detected before. The ship was not only moving, but it was preparing for something. Dr. Harrison's team worked around the clock, trying to piece together every fragment of information. The more they uncovered, the more the mystery deepened. The Supercarrier had been built for an ancient war that, according to history, humanity had won. But now, it was clear that something had changed. The enemy, whoever or whatever they were, had returned. "We need more information," Dr. Harrison said, her eyes narrowed as she focused on the data in front of her. "We need to know what we're up against." She quickly drafted a message to the highest authorities, requesting a deeper investigation into the historical records of the Supercarrier. If it had been built during the Old War, there must have been records of its enemies. But the records were scarce, and the people who could answer those questions were long gone. As humanity scrambled to make sense of the situation, one thing was becoming clear. The Supercarrier's return was not a simple matter of space exploration. There was something deeper, something darker, at play. In a small government facility, a team of military experts began analyzing the energy signatures coming from the ship. It wasn't just the power of the Supercarrier that was worrisome. It was the fact that there seemed to be a pattern in its movements. It wasn't just traveling aimlessly. It was headed somewhere. It had a destination. The countdown was ticking. As each hour passed, the Supercarrier drew closer to Earth. No one knew exactly when it would arrive, but its presence was undeniable. And with it came an overwhelming sense of dread. The Supercarrier awakens. The tension across Earth was palpable. The Supercarrier, humanity's greatest creation, was coming closer every day. But the silence from the ship, except for the cryptic messages, was deafening. Scientists, military experts, and world leaders were desperate for answers, but the ship offered none. Time was running out, and the pressure to make a decision was mounting. In the International Space Monitoring Center, Dr. Leila Harrison and her team were now receiving constant updates from the ship's approaching location. They had made a breakthrough in understanding the signals it had been sending, but the truth seemed more unsettling with each new discovery. "Dr. Harrison, the energy signatures, they're fluctuating," one of her analysts reported, his face pale. "It's like the ship is preparing something." Dr. Harrison's brow furrowed as she leaned over the console, her eyes scanning the data. Preparing what? And why now? She whispered to herself. The Supercarrier wasn't just a massive vessel. It was a force of nature, capable of wiping out entire fleets. The energy readings were beyond anything humanity had ever seen, even more powerful than the best weapons they had developed. The signals it sent were growing stronger and more focused, as though the ship was aligning with some distant purpose. At the United Nations headquarters, the global leaders were again in session, trying to make sense of the new developments. President Harper, the leader of the United States, sat at the head of the table, his face grim. The other world leaders were equally concerned, but there was one problem no one could ignore. Fear was growing, and unity was slipping. "We need to decide what action to take," President Harper said, his voice steady, though it hid the tension beneath. "We've been given no choice but to prepare. The ship is coming, and we don't know if it's here to help or destroy us. We have to be ready for either scenario," the Russian ambassador responded. "But we cannot wait any longer. We need to take action." At that moment, a holographic display flashed on the room's central screen, showing the latest data from the Supercarrier. The energy spikes were becoming impossible to ignore. According to Dr. Harrison's latest analysis, the Supercarrier is not just arriving. It's positioning itself in orbit around Earth, said one of the military advisors. "It's preparing for something, and we need to know what it is." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. No one had any idea why a ship of such power would approach Earth with such intent. But one thing was clear. Humanity was facing an unprecedented moment. Across the world, as nations argued and made decisions, a small group of scientists working in the shadows had made a breakthrough that would change everything. They had discovered something extraordinary in the ship's data. The supercarrier was not entirely alone. There were other signals coming from beyond it. Signals that suggested a much larger fleet, one that humanity had no idea existed. "This isn't just one ship," Dr. Harrison said as she spoke to her team late one night. "The supercarrier is the vanguard. It's bringing something else with it, something far more dangerous." It was clear now. Earth was about to face a threat unlike any it had ever known. But what exactly was the threat? Dr. Harrison's team could only speculate, but the message was clear. They weren't just up against one powerful ship. They were up against a galactic force that had been waiting for humanity's reckoning. The tension among the world's leaders grew even more intense. They knew now that the supercarrier was just the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. But could they survive what was coming? Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, as the supercarrier continued to approach, cities around the world were in chaos. Military forces were mobilized, but the public had no idea what was happening. Governments did their best to keep things under control, but there was no way to calm the panic spreading through the streets. People feared the unknown and feared that humanity might not survive this new threat. In a remote military base, Colonel John Marlowe sat in his command center, watching the radar closely. His face was tense, but his mind raced with strategies. This was the moment every soldier had trained for, but it was also the moment humanity had feared for generations. The stakes were higher than ever before. "Colonel, the ship is entering the Earth's atmosphere," one of his officers reported. Marlowe's pulse quickened. "We'll be ready," he replied. "I don't know what's coming, but humanity will not fall without a fight." The clock was ticking, and the supercarrier was now only days away. As more and more data streamed in, humanity's grip on control was slipping. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but each discovery raised more questions. The mystery of the supercarrier and the looming threat only deepened. Humanity stood on the edge of a precipice. The supercarrier, a ship of unimaginable power, was about to reveal its true purpose. But whether that purpose was salvation or destruction was still unknown. Every second that passed brought them closer to the answer. The approach of the unknown. As the supercarrier grew ever closer, the world held its breath. Dr. Leela Harrison and her team had been working tirelessly, trying to decode the ship's mysterious signals, but each attempt left them with more questions than answers. The ship was more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered, its systems baffling even the brightest minds on Earth. The air was thick with tension in the International Space Monitoring Center as Leela stared at the latest data. The supercarrier was now within Earth's orbit, its massive frame looming over the planet like an ominous shadow. The sheer scale of the ship was incomprehensible. Its hull stretched across the sky, casting a dark silhouette against the stars. "We need to prepare for contact," Leela said to her team, her voice filled with urgency. "We don't know if it's hostile or if it's here to help, but the time to act is now." Outside the monitoring center, Earth's military was on high alert. Colonel John Marlowe's forces were spread across the planet, coordinating a response to the looming threat. The world's top military commanders had gathered in secret, preparing for every possible scenario. Their strategies ranged from peaceful negotiation to outright combat. But even with all their preparations, no one could shake the gnawing feeling of uncertainty. The supercarrier was not just a ship. It was a symbol of power and mystery, its purpose unknown. Every decision carried immense weight. If they made the wrong choice, Earth could face destruction. If they hesitated, humanity might be wiped out before they even understood what was happening. At the United Nations, leaders from all corners of the globe gathered, their faces grim. The President of the United States, President Harper, stood at the head of the table, surveying the room. He could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. The fate of humanity rested in their hands. "We've come to a critical moment," President Harper said, his voice steady but filled with the tension that gripped him. "The supercarrier is not a mere threat. It's something more. We've never seen anything like it. But we cannot afford to panic. We must make decisions based on what we know, not what we fear. His words did little to calm the unease that hung in the room. The stakes were higher than ever before. One of the advisors, a military strategist, spoke up. "We have no idea what kind of force we're dealing with. The ship is capable of anything. If we don't act swiftly and decisively, we might never get another chance." The tension was palpable, but despite the uncertainty, one thing was clear. Humanity's fate was being decided in real time, and the countdown to the unknown had begun. Meanwhile, on the surface of Earth, cities across the globe were in turmoil. Governments were trying to maintain order, but the growing threat of the supercarrier's arrival sent waves of panic through the streets. People feared the worst. The media was flooded with speculation, and conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Was Earth about to face an invasion? Was this the beginning of humanity's end? In the chaos, Colonel Marlowe's forces remained focused. His command center was a flurry of activity as soldiers, pilots, and engineers prepared for what they hoped would be a peaceful first contact, but knew deep down might be anything but. "We've got less than 12 hours until it reaches full orbit," one of his officers said, eyes glued to the radar. "We need to be ready for anything." Marlowe stood at the center of the room, his eyes sharp. The weight of command had never felt heavier. "We don't know what's coming, but we'll be ready. We can't afford to take chances." The world's military forces had been preparing for decades for an event like this, but nothing could truly prepare them for what was about to happen. The supercarrier was unlike anything they had ever seen, and its presence alone was enough to rattle the most experienced officers. Suddenly, the ship's communication channels flickered to life, cutting through the silence like a knife. On every screen across Earth, a message appeared, transmitted in a strange language that no one could understand. The message itself wasn't important. It was the timing that mattered. The supercarrier had sent its first official communication, and Earth was no closer to understanding its meaning. Dr. Harrison was working tirelessly to decode the transmission, but it was clear that the clock was running out. They had little time to interpret the message, and yet every moment they spent waiting seemed to stretch longer than the last. The public's response. In the streets, people were glued to their screens, watching as the supercarrier hovered above them. The news was a mixture of confusion, fear, and hope. Could this ship be their salvation? Or was it a harbinger of doom? The questions raced through everyone's minds, but answers were in short supply. Some saw the supercarrier as a sign of humanity's inevitable defeat. Others, however, dared to believe that the ship might be a lifeline, an ancient, powerful ally who had come to rescue Earth from an unseen threat. The uncertainty was palpable, and the world's mood shifted from fear to hope, and back again in the blink of an eye. As the ship loomed overhead, the people of Earth could only wait. The supercarrier's final approach seemed to stretch for eternity. Time moved slowly as humanity braced for whatever came next. The unknown becomes reality. It wasn't until hours later that the signal came through, a deep, resonating sound that sent waves of electricity through the air. It was more than just a transmission. It was a signal of something far greater. The supercarrier was not just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's past, present, and future. And as humanity prepared to face whatever came next, one truth became undeniable. Earth had just crossed the point of no return. Whatever happened in the hours to come would determine their survival or their destruction. The first contact. The moment humanity had been dreading and anticipating arrived. As the massive supercarrier loomed overhead, the world seemed to hold its breath. Earth had never experienced anything like this before. An alien presence, hovering silently above, its dark form casting a shadow over the planet. Colonel Marlowe's team stood ready in their command center, nervously watching the screens. They had prepared for this moment, but now, in the silence before the storm, everything felt uncertain. No one had any idea what the aliens wanted or what kind of power they possessed. All they knew was that this moment would change the course of history. "We're about to make contact," Marlowe muttered to himself, watching as the ship's communication channel flared to life once again. The hum of energy filled the room. The tension was palpable, every soul in the room hanging on the edge of anticipation. Dr. Leela Harrison sat in front of her console, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to decipher the message. The alien language was still undecoded, but they knew this was their one chance to communicate. They had no idea if the aliens were peaceful or hostile, but the outcome would have lasting consequences. "I'm ready," she said, her voice calm but strained. She glanced at the countdown clock that ticked away relentlessly. "We don't have much time. We need to respond before they make their next move." Leela's team frantically typed at their keyboards, sending out their own signals, trying to establish some form of communication. Then, a series of strange symbols appeared on the screen, followed by a single message. It was brief, but the meaning was clear enough. "We come in peace, but we will not tolerate resistance." For a moment, there was silence in the room. The weight of the words hung heavy in the air. Was this a threat, or was it an offer of peace? Humanity had no way of knowing for sure, but one thing was undeniable. This was the moment of reckoning. Global reactions. As the message was broadcast across the planet, governments scrambled to respond. The United Nations quickly convened, and President Harper addressed the world. His voice was steady, though there was an underlying tension. "To the people of Earth," he began, his words broadcast to every corner of the globe, "we have made first contact with the aliens. They have communicated their intention to us. Their message is clear. They come in peace, but we must not challenge them." In every major city, people gathered around their screens, watching in awe as the news unfolded. While many were hopeful, others were filled with anxiety. After all, the aliens had made it clear that resistance would not be tolerated. Colonel Marlowe and his team stood in the command center, trying to figure out what to do next. Should they take the aliens' words at face value? Should humanity prepare for a fight? Or was this an opportunity to learn from a species far more advanced than their own? The military was still on high alert, but now the mission had changed. Instead of preparing for a possible invasion, they needed to prepare for a diplomatic negotiation, something the world had never had to face on this scale before. The Supercarrier's influence. The Supercarrier remained silent in orbit, its presence a constant reminder of humanity's fragile position. No one knew what the next step would be. Would the aliens descend to Earth? Or would they wait for humanity to make its next move? Leela worked tirelessly on the translation, decoding more of the alien message. As more of the message was unveiled, it became clear that the aliens were not here to conquer, but they had an agenda. They claimed to be part of a vast, intergalactic federation and had been watching humanity's progress for centuries. "We've been watching you," one of the decoded lines read. "You've shown potential, but we cannot allow you to rise beyond your station. The Federation decides the fates of species. You must comply." Leela's heart sank as she read the final translation. The message wasn't as benevolent as they had hoped. It was clear now that humanity was being tested, and the fate of Earth rested on the next few days of interaction with this powerful alien force. A plan of action. President Harper called for a summit with world leaders. The stakes had never been higher. If humanity did not handle this situation with great care, they might face destruction. But if they succeeded, they could be granted access to knowledge and technology beyond their wildest dreams. "What do we do now?" one of the leaders asked. "We proceed cautiously," Harper replied. "We respond with diplomacy, but we also make it clear that we will not be intimidated. We must show strength, even if we don't know exactly what we're up against." Military forces were still on standby, but Earth's leaders agreed that this was a moment for diplomacy, not conflict. Yet in their hearts, they all knew that this was a dangerous game. The arrival of the envoy. Hours passed, and as the world watched, the aliens made their move. A smaller, more agile vessel separated from the Supercarrier and began descending toward Earth. This was no attack. It was an envoy, sent to initiate the next phase of communication. But as the alien ship broke through the atmosphere and descended toward Earth's surface, there was an unsettling silence. Humanity held its breath once again. What would this encounter reveal? Would the aliens speak with words of peace, or would they reveal their true intentions? In the vast expanse of space, Earth's future was now in the hands of those who had come from the stars. And as the envoy ship neared the surface, humanity's next step would define whether they would be allies or enemies. The first face-to-face encounter. As the alien envoy ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, a heavy silence blanketed the world. News stations, government officials, and ordinary people alike were glued to their screens. The entire planet held its breath, waiting for the moment that would define the future of humankind. Colonel Marlowe and his team stood at the command center, their eyes fixed on the giant monitor. The alien ship, unlike any craft they had ever seen, glided smoothly toward Earth, its sleek design giving off an eerie aura. It seemed almost too perfect, too controlled. Everything about it screamed of advanced technology and alien precision. "We're not sure what to expect," Marlowe said, his voice low and tense. "Stay on alert. This could go either way." Dr. Leela Harrison worked feverishly at her console, analyzing every piece of incoming data. Despite the aliens' clear demonstration of power, she clung to the hope that this encounter might lead to something positive. After all, the message was still unclear about their true intentions. Minutes felt like hours as the alien ship finally landed in a remote open field. A hush fell over the command room. The time for words had ended. Now it was time for action. The alien ambassador. The doors of the alien ship slowly opened, and from the shadows within emerged a figure. Unlike the imposing form of the ship, the ambassador was almost delicate in appearance, humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. Their skin shimmered with an unnatural light, like liquid metal that changed colors with every movement. Their eyes, deep and vast, seemed to contain an unfathomable depth of knowledge. For the first time in history, humanity would be meeting face to face with an alien. The ambassador stepped forward, its movements graceful and deliberate. There was no mistaking the power that radiated from them, yet there was an unsettling calmness in their presence. President Harper, flanked by top military leaders, stepped forward as well. He had been briefed on the risks and possible outcomes, but nothing could prepare him for the gravity of the moment. He swallowed hard and took a deep breath. The alien ambassador extended a hand, not as a sign of threat, but as a gesture of peace, a strange offer. "Greetings, leaders of Earth," the ambassador spoke in perfect English, though there was a strange, melodic quality to their voice. "We come from the United Federation of Galaxies. We have observed your species and watched your rise, and we have decided that you are ready for the next stage of your evolution." The words hit the air like a thunderclap. Earth's leaders exchanged stunned glances. Evolution. Ready? For what? What did the aliens want? And why had they come? Harper cleared his throat. "We're listening. Please, explain what you mean." The alien ambassador's eyes glinted with something like amusement. "You, humans, have potential, great potential, but you are not yet worthy of joining the Federation. You still lack understanding. You have great power at your disposal, but it is untamed. You could destroy yourselves before you ever get the chance to reach your true potential." Harper furrowed his brow. "What are you asking of us?" The alien's expression softened slightly. "We are offering you a path forward, a path to enlightenment. You can either accept our guidance and join the Federation, or you can choose to remain isolated and risk your own destruction. The decision is yours, but know this: time is running out for your species." The dilemma. The leaders of Earth gathered in secret to discuss the offer. The fate of humanity was in their hands. On one hand, the alien ambassador had offered knowledge and power, a chance to ascend to something greater. On the other, the alien's message carried an unmistakable threat. Refuse their offer, and humanity might not survive. What if they are telling the truth? Dr. Leela Harrison asked, her voice thoughtful but worried. What if we really are on the verge of destroying ourselves, and their guidance is the only way to save us? Colonel Marlowe shook his head. We can't be sure. We don't know what their intentions are beyond what they've said. For all we know, they're using the Federation as a way to control us. The debate raged on. Every leader, every scientist, and every military officer knew that this was humanity's defining moment. Trust the aliens and accept their offer of guidance, or reject them and risk the future of the planet. A mysterious warning. Meanwhile, back at the alien envoy ship, the ambassador observed the leaders meeting from afar, sensing the tension in their hearts. A low hum filled the air as the ambassador tapped a device in their hand. A series of encrypted signals were transmitted to a nearby vessel in orbit, far out of Earth's view. A voice, cold and detached, echoed from the shadows within the ship. "Have you made contact, Ambassador?" the voice asked. "Yes," the ambassador replied. "The humans are cautious but open to the idea. They will decide soon." "And what will happen if they refuse the offer?" the voice asked, almost too casually. The ambassador paused before responding. "We shall see, but we will not wait forever." The clock ticks down. Back on Earth, the clock was ticking. Time was running out, and President Harper was about to address the world again. This time, the decision was not his alone. He would speak to the people of Earth, calling on them to make the choice, to accept the unknown and embrace the future, or to reject the alien presence and stand alone. "We cannot ignore the opportunity in front of us," Harper said in his address. "But we must remain vigilant. Our future is uncertain, and we must ensure that we do not sacrifice our freedom in the process." As the message went out across the globe, humanity stood on the edge of a precipice. What would they choose? And more importantly, would the alien ambassador's threat be more than just words? As the envoy ship hovered above, the world waited for the next move. The tension mounts. The stage was set for a decision that would define the fate of Earth. The aliens had made their offer, and humanity had to choose. The ambassadors had arrived, but were they friends or foes? The uncertainty that hung in the air was suffocating. The hour was drawing near for the world to make its choice, and whether they accepted or rejected the alien guidance, the consequences would be immense. Time was running out, and the world was waiting for a sign. Would humanity be able to rise to the challenge, or would they succumb to the power of those from the stars? Humanity's choice, the fateful decision. The world was on edge. Every city, every home, every person was waiting for the final word. The alien ambassador's offer had been clear: accept their guidance and join the Galactic Federation, or risk isolation and destruction. But the questions lingered in the minds of the people. Were the aliens sincere, or was this a trap? Could humanity truly trust them? Or should they stand strong, alone if necessary, to maintain their independence? President Harper stood in front of the world's leaders in a vast, secure command room. The room was filled with the most influential figures on Earth: military generals, top scientists, and the world's political leaders. They all looked to him, waiting for him to make the final call. He had just finished speaking to the alien ambassador, and the clock was ticking. Their offer had not changed. The pressure was mounting. "This is it," Harper said, his voice calm but strained. "We have only one chance to make the right decision. Do we trust them, or do we refuse their offer?" Colonel Marlowe, standing near the back of the room, clenched his fists, his brow furrowed with doubt. "We don't even know what we're agreeing to," he muttered, loud enough for others to hear. "They could be setting us up for something much worse." Dr. Leela Harrison, who had been working closely with the military to decipher the alien messages, stepped forward, her eyes wide with concern. "But we can't ignore the possibility that they're telling the truth. If they are offering us the chance to join a galactic federation, it might mean access to advanced knowledge, protection, things that could save humanity from the wars, climate disasters, and resource depletion we face. Harper paused, considering the weight of their words, or it could be a way for them to control us, to force us into submission. The debate continued, voices raised and arguments exchanged, but the weight of the decision was clear to everyone present. What would humanity choose? A global decision. The time for internal debates was over. The world's leaders had made their choice. At a press conference, President Harper addressed the globe once more, standing alongside the alien ambassador, who had appeared in front of him. The world was watching, waiting to hear the final verdict. "We stand at a crossroads," Harper began, his voice echoing across the globe. "After careful consideration, we've made our decision. We have chosen to accept the offer of the Galactic Federation and join forces with the aliens." A stunned silence followed. Across the world, millions of people were glued to their screens, waiting to hear more. Was this the right choice? Harper continued, his tone resolute. "This is not a surrender, nor is it a blind leap into the unknown. We are entering into an alliance on our terms, with the goal of ensuring the future and survival of humanity. But we will do so carefully, cautiously. Our independence remains a priority, and we will never lose sight of that." The alien ambassador nodded, seemingly pleased with the decision. "Your people are wise," they said, their voice calm and assured. "You have chosen the path of growth, of potential. But beware, for the Federation is not without its challenges. There are many races, many alliances, and even more dangers. You must prove yourselves worthy in time." The first step into the Federation. The moment of decision had passed, but the true challenge was just beginning. As the world celebrated the decision, there was an undercurrent of tension. What would joining the Galactic Federation truly mean for humanity? What kind of challenges and dangers lay ahead? And perhaps most pressing, what would Earth's new role in the galaxy be? In the days that followed, humans began to see the first steps of what their new future would look like. The alien ship stayed in orbit, an ominous reminder of the power and influence the Federation now had over Earth. The world's top scientists and engineers began working with the aliens, learning from their advanced technologies. A new era of human innovation began, one that promised breakthroughs in medicine, energy, and space travel. Yet, beneath this optimistic surface, there was an undeniable tension. Despite the vast potential of the Federation, humanity was now under the watchful eye of countless alien races. What if some of them weren't as benevolent as the ambassador? What if, as the alien ambassador had warned, humanity's presence in the galaxy would be met with resistance, or worse, hostility? A final warning. Late one night, as President Harper sat alone in his office, a secure transmission came through. It was a message from the alien ambassador, this time with a different tone. "President Harper," the voice echoed in his room, "you have made your choice, but remember, your decision has consequences. Humanity will not be alone in this galaxy, and not all races will welcome your presence. If you fail to prove yourselves, if you show any sign of weakness, the consequences will be dire." Harper's heart raced as he listened. The warning was unmistakable, and it sent a chill down his spine. But the decision had been made. The Federation was now a part of humanity's future, whether they were ready for it or not. The beginning of a new era. As the days passed, Earth began to change. Massive fleets of alien ships patrolled the skies, while ambassadors from various races visited Earth to initiate trade and cultural exchanges. The human race was no longer the isolated species it once was. They were now part of something far greater, something that could both offer hope and present unimaginable challenges. Colonel Marlowe, standing on the bridge of Earth's new flagship, watched the stars outside the window. His mind wandered back to the alien ambassador's words, "If you fail to prove yourselves, the consequences will be dire." Humanity's future was now tied to something much larger than itself. And so, humanity's journey into the galaxy began. Would they rise to the occasion, proving themselves worthy of their place among the stars? Or would they fall, lost in the vastness of the universe, consumed by the very forces they had sought to join? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Earth had entered an era of both unimaginable opportunity and unyielding danger.